tell us what we're doing right now, Don.
Well, we're trying to control ourselves at the moment.
Right.
We're
okay.
trying to not go too fast. And
Why is that? I've never been to Iowa before. Walk me through it. Why are we trying to control ourselves?
Well, it's a big hill. It's an 8-degree slope, and it lasts about a half a mile or maybe 600 yards or so. And you don't want to blow it all away here because we got 7 miles to run, and it's a hilly course. And tomorrow is going to be the hottest day of the summer for us, race day. Excuse me. And it typically is a very hot and humid day.
And so Don, you've run every BIC since 1975.
Yes, I have.
And how many of you are there in this club? And what do you call yourselves?
We call ourselves the all-timers.
Right.
Some races call the people that have participated every year legends, but we call ourselves all-timers.
And how many of you are there left?
There are 4.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, there were 6. And one of the guys had a heart attack at 3:30 in the morning, BIC's day. And we're all about 70, maybe a little older, 75 maybe is an average age. In any case, now we're making the turn onto Kirkwood Boulevard. And we're at about 0.8 of a mile here. Anyway, 3:30 in the morning, this dude has a heart attack. His name is Kerry. And as they're loading him in the ambulance, Kerry told his adult daughter to pack his running bag in case the doctors let him leave from the race.
That's so screwed.
But Kerry didn't make it, so we lost Kerry that year. And then a couple years later, another one of the guys, his name was Randy, he retired from the police department, I think on a disability, and moved out to Idaho to run a adventure racing camp. And he didn't tell anybody he was going, and then he didn't have any money to get back. And when we got the story later, the race director said, if I'd have known that, I would have bought him a ticket back. So he missed, and then a couple years after that, he got sick and died. So we lost Randy. And the rest of us are just kind of overweight old men now, and we struggle along. And
well, okay, so 1980 or 1975.
Yeah.
What compelled you to run this inaugural race with 84 people in it? And tell us a little bit about that history.
I was always a daily runner, and in college I was a track athlete. I wasn't great or anything, but I always enjoyed running. And that year, a local running club got formed, the Corn Belt Running Club, which became the second largest running club in the country behind the New York Roadrunners. And we had over 2,000 members in 1979, but in any case, Corn Belt got formed, and I joined right away, and they put on this little foot race called the BIC's 7-mile run, and 84 of us went and ran, and me and a buddy who I worked with, we were both joggers, and we decided we would do it. And I think one of the funny things is, and there were 84 that year, and a little skinny dude from Sri Lanka named Lucian Rosa came from Wisconsin Parkside College up in Wisconsin to run. He got invited down.
And he was second in the Boston Marathon in 1974, right?
I think you have the history correct there.
And also Steve Hogue, who was, first in 73 Boston? Something like that. There were 2 elites in that first year. It was Lucian Rosa and Steve Hogue, as I recall.
Yeah, and I think they went 1-2.
Yeah.
Anyway, we were all down there milling around, I think 2nd and Main Street, downtown Davenport, and here's mile 2. This is a fast part of the course here. It's downhill, gradual downhill.
And you remember when this was all cobblestone?
It was paving brick.
Yep.
And on rainy days, it was very slippery. It was really slippery. We're milling around, and here's this little skinny slide of a guy sitting on the curb at 2nd and Main. And I'm going, wow, that must be Lucian Rosa. I mean, if you weighed over 90 pounds, I'd be surprised. But of course, that's a typical runner. The elites always tend to be very slim and lightweight. Now, if you're really tall, you have to be careful here.
So that was 75, and then you came back and ran it the next year because why not?
I did, and it was, I think, a very oppressive day because I was very, very tired afterwards. And I turned to my friend Rod, who I ran with again, and I said, Rod, I'm never going to do this again. but I did, and
Yeah.
still do.
And what was your best experience in the Bix? Best time, but also best experience?
Well, I think I finished, one year I was the first Davenport finisher. Again, there weren't that many runners back then. And I think 1982, I broke 39 minutes, and that was my best.
So that was my dad.
Gosh,
That was his first Bix, 1982.
it was.
And how many people ran that year? Do you remember?
I would just guess and say 2,500.
Yeah.
That was the year Rob De Costello cut
The short course.
Yeah.
Cut the course
Now,
short.
I ran the legitimate distance. And only a few people cut it short that year.
Yeah.
And wasn't that the year Joan Benoit ran for the first time?
I can't say for sure.
That year, this middle road hill we just came up, that was my worst part of the race.
Well, this is the worst part of the race.
Yeah, so
In
tell us
fact,
why.
It was for me then. but
Well-
I noticed over the years that I kept moving the worst part further on, and it settled upon the climb back up Kirkwood. And for the last several years I ran the race, that was always the worst.
I think part of the reason this is hard, it's halfway, and we've just gone through this part of the course, which is a gradual downhill for a mile and a half, and you tend to work during that. You tend to go a little too fast, and then it's a very steep hill here. It's steeper than, it's only a quarter mile, but it's steeper than the beginning Brady Street
Yeah, I think it's
hill.
about 11% or 12% grade, right?
Yeah, it's pretty steep, and then of course you hit this downhill, which is relatively steep. It's about a half a mile downhill, and you tend to go too fast going down this, and then you have to turn around and go back up. So this third mile is the worst part of the race course, and typically the guy that leads at the turnaround does not win,
Why is that?
because he's raced his butt off going downhill,
Yeah.
and he blows it.
And then you get to this point, and then it's just hurt. You make that hairpin, and then you're just in pain.
Yeah.
Because immediately you have resistance that you didn't have for the previous,
Now,
majority
at
of the last couple miles.
At least it's shaded, but there tends to be not much breeze in here, so it's a little stifling. And again, it's uphill. It's very difficult. Very difficult.
I was telling David, maybe I was stupid at the time, but I always seemed to, when I do the turnaround, I'd always speed up and charge this hill, and did most of my passing between here and the 3.5 mile mark.
Yeah. In fact, at this point, this very inflection of the hill right before the peak, I passed Bill Rogers one year on this
Oh.
part of the hill.
That's memorable.
That's when we were very old.
Yeah.
This peak is what I called one of the two snaps, where the road just suddenly goes up.
Yep, it's very bad here. I usually walk about here.
This is where I used to have those nightmares, David.
Yeah.
Where I'd be running it, and I'd be getting lower and lower and lower until I was like duck walking, and I couldn't stop the load from building up.
This is your Bix nightmare?
Yeah.
I have them regularly.
What's your Bix nightmare?
It's ridiculous. My Bix nightmare is that the race course takes us through a multi-story building. And everybody gets all globed up inside this building. And, I mean, it's just, that's it. That's the dream I have.
So we have the road keeps getting closer and closer to your face until you're just like basically
Until
crawling.
my knees are hitting my chin.
Yeah.
And there's the people, just throngs of people you can't get through. And the other one is, I want to run, but I can't run. I just can't move my legs. It's very weird. But it's kind of a classic race course. It's essentially the same one it's been for 47 years.
Yep.
A couple of different, it's a different first mile.
Yeah, they used to start on Perry Street, which was a little narrow.
And David said he wished they would still do Perry Street. And I said, I don't think you'd want to do Perry Street.
It's a pretty narrow street.
It's narrow and it's all hilly. I mean, at least when you come down Brady, you've had it. You've gotten past it. But with Perry, you still got a bunch left.
So one of my finishing memories is one of the Perry Street races, which would have been one of the first 3 or 4. And we were coming back, and just at the crest of the hill before you went down to the finish, somebody was handing out sponges. And I was very wet sponges, and I was very thirsty. So I took that sponge in one move with my arm and put it in my mouth, and it was the sensation of soap suds. It just killed me. And I started coughing and spitting. But in any case, another finishing story. This was going down Brady Street, maybe the first time we went down Brady for the finish. And I'm struggling to try to keep up a good pace, and all of a sudden I hear this kind of splashing noise. And I looked next to me, and here was a guy that was projectile vomiting as he was going down the hill, which it happens.
So tell us about where we are in the course right now.
Well, we're at 4.5 miles on Kirkwood. This is the gentle up now where we had our gentle down at 2 to 3 miles.
It doesn't feel so gentle at this point in the race, does it?
It doesn't feel so gentle. It's not as easy to see the rise, but you can definitely feel it. And we have another lovely little rise coming up here just before the 5 mile mark that is pretty bad.
That's the other one that I call the snap. That's the worst of them.
So there's a steep rise here for about 150 yards. And then the next half mile is a gentle uphill. So really on the way back, after the big steep hill in the middle of the race, you have a gentle uphill that goes for 1.5 miles, 2 miles.
Yeah.
With one steep rise in the middle of it.
So, yeah, what I find challenging about this course is you get no reprieve. You have a hill, and then you've got another hill. You think at the crest of a steep snap, as my dad calls it, you're going to get a break, but you don't. It just keeps going up. It's just gentle, but it doesn't feel gentle.
And it really goes up all the way to Brady Street.
Yeah.
Which, again, is at least 1.5 miles of up.
Now, tell us, what do you think the significance of the Bix is for this area?
Oh, I think it's kind of a big celebration of life and of summer. For those of you who don't live in the northern part of the country, the winters in Iowa are very cold and forbidding, and summer is when we can relax and picnic and camp, and this is just a great community celebration. It's the turnout on the streets for the race by the citizens is very good. The whole race course is lined with people. It's broadcast on TV. We've got an internationally known commentator who comes in and is hired to comment the race, and it's streamed on the World Wide Web. So our friends in Africa, they've already been asking me, want to know how to watch it, and we've had many great athletes come and perform here. And
I think it's broadcast to 66 countries, isn't it?
that's the old line, I guess. Yeah. So for old time's sake, we can't go down Brady Street because it's a one-way street. We'll go down Perry.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I like it. So, Yeah, speaking of the elite athletes, what's your involvement now with the race? Tell us about how you remain involved with all the in the role you play in bringing the elites here.
Well, I know a lot of the African athletes, and it's primarily because of my association with all different kinds of road races here in town, because they come and you get to know them. And I have the pleasure of working as an agent for a small handful of athletes from Kenya, one lady from Ethiopia that I work for. In fact, I had 5 athletes in the race accepted, but due to the pandemic, you can't hardly even get a visa if you don't already have one. And the one athlete who did have a visa, she ended up going to Nigeria to race last week or 2 weeks ago, so she couldn't come. And they're wonderful people. I mean, they're just sweet, nice people. And I've been to Kenya to visit some of the athletes and see the places where they train. In fact, I had the honor to meet Eliud Kipchoge at Kaptagat Forest, which was just amazing. In any case, so yeah, I've come to know many of these great athletes, and I communicate with them regularly. And sometimes I go to the races with them. I've accompanied Africans to Houston Marathon twice, Philadelphia Marathon 3 times. It's fun to go, and sometimes I can even get a lead entry in the shorter races when I go to those places.
That's great. What do they tell you about this race? Like, what kind of review do you hear from them?
They like the challenge of it, but I think the main thing that they seem to enjoy is they enjoy the community support, and I think it's just a fun race to come and participate in, and they just seem to like it. And I think it's because of the people, but you never know. So here's the old downhill Perry Street.
Yeah.
Well, when I interviewed a number of years ago, I interviewed Catherine Nariba about her experience with the race. And for anybody who doesn't know, Catherine Nariba, of course, is a former world record holder in the marathon, nicknamed Catherine the Great back in the 2000s, Boston Marathon champion. She's a tremendous athlete, and she identified the community as the main thing that she loves about the Bics. She loves the opportunity to come here, and even in her 40s, she's continued to come back to the Bics to just see her old friends and to be a part of the experience.
One of our elites this year, Diane Nakuri, she's from Burundi, and she went to college at the University of Iowa. And for her, and she's been hurt for a few years, but for her it's like a homecoming because she sees a lot of friends when she comes back.
Yeah. And Bill Rogers and Joan Benoit still come every year, and they say the same. I think they've only missed 1 or 2 years, right? In the past 47.
I think this is Bill's 41st year.
Yeah.
And Joan Benoit Samuelson didn't come back this year. And of course, she has another race. She puts on a race next weekend.
Yeah,
so
Beach to Beacon.
She's probably rather busy with that. And
Yeah.
I don't know why Meb didn't come this year, but Meb didn't come.
I think he's in Hawaii.
So, anyway, it's a fun community event, celebration of life. I like to say that my regular participation is more an accident of age than it was a plan. Of course, now I don't want to miss, but I never had a plan to do it every year. But when I was younger, I thought, I looked at it as a city championship, and I wanted to do the best I possibly could.
Did you back then travel around and run, New York City Marathon? Did you go to run Peachtree or any of the other iconic?
I always wanted to go to Peachtree. Never did. No, I ran a lot of Midwestern races.
Yep.
But I never went to any of the big 10Ks anywhere.
But so, I mean, this race really is the local Boston Marathon.
Yeah, it's the local Boston Marathon.
Yeah.
That's a good way of putting it.
If anybody's watching this on YouTube, what would you say to them, a competitive runner who loves road races, what would you say that?
Well,
what would
what-
be your parting words for them?
What they'll find here is the best competition in a very challenging environment, typically. In other words, it's going to be hot and humid. It's going to be physically a hilly challenge, and you're going to have great competition. Look at that. There's a place to park. So if you want a challenge against the best competition, this is a wonderful opportunity to make a name for yourself. Seriously, a top 10. Typically we pay 10 places. We're only paying 5 this year. But typically it pays 10 places, and if you make a top 10 here, you'll be invited to any foot race in the country. It's a big deal.